one of the things that I find just, it's hard for me to understand this, but it's happened in other countries as well. And that's when you have the president of this country, now the former prime minister, now the president, whatever we want to call him, his whole political base was established with the Gülen movement. Am I pronouncing it right? Gülen? The Gülen movement, and as far as I can see, and I've studied what they believe, and I've talked to some people in that movement, they tend to be people who have high values and are looking for a more open and, tolerant Islam that would be a very admirable type of, it would be, and by the way, it would be the equivalent of the Rotary Club in the United States. In the sense you got people who have a philosophy of helping other people who also are politically involved and involved in community efforts to help people. How is it that the Gülen movement now has been declared public enemy number one by the man who they were actually helped put into power and over the years have been one of his chief sources of support? How did that come about?
I would like to say something about the Gülen movement. I mean, the Gülen movement, I agree with you, has an image of tolerant Islam. Yes, they were allied with Erdogan. They helped. They staffed when Erdogan came to power. He did not have the personnel, and it's the Gülen movement that staffed it. But the Gülen movement also was if you ask the Kurds, the Gülen movement was very hard on the Kurds. Because Gülenist judges and prosecutors unleashed lots and lots of cases against Kurds that are still continuing today. There are people who went to prison for nothing. I mean, I just met with one of the most important lawyers in Diyarbakir a few weeks ago. He spent 4.5 years in jail. You know why? Because he was at the demonstration. 5,000 people behind him opened the flag, the PKK flag, and the judges and the prosecutors said, "Oh, you're a member of the PKK because you were standing 5,000 people ahead of you."
But is that the Gülen movement, or is
and
that?
He played. Well, this is why I'm. Okay. And he played. If you go and ask the Kurds, the Gülenists were very, very hard on the Kurdish nationalist movement. There were many ways they were very good. They brought in very good stuff, but on one issue they were very, very hard. So it's not a completely. We have to also acknowledge what was wrong with them. The reason he turned on them is because he thinks that, and there's probably enough, he may be right, that the Gülenists actually exposed the corruption. I mean, the people who leaked those tapes of Erdogan and the money issues he thinks are Gülenists. And today, the irony, of course, is that when he came to power and he aligned himself with Gülen against the military, today it's he and the military against Gülen, so the alliances have changed. But this...
So the Gülen movement ended up exposing some of the corruption that was part of his.
That's what he thinks.
And it should be added that we are talking about quite a large network, or was large in Turkey, and it was influential, especially in media. For example, one of the things that I would like to mention is now that Cihan News Agency was seized by the government, we don't have a watchdog to actually follow the elections. That was the only one. Now you're going to learn the election results from State News Agency. Whatever number they put up, it would be the number. But it was always checked against Cihan News numbers before. Since it's a large network, as I said, it has, because of that, it has usual shortcomings. Like, it's a diverse network. There are nationalists, there are more pious, less pious people, there are more secular, less secular, and there are people who are just minding their business about like teaching, opening schools, and so on. And there are others who are more interested in politics, right? So it's hard to define where it ends, where it begins, and how a judge or prosecutor is basically considered a part of it while they themselves reject it and so on. So there are all these shortcomings, and I think nobody can really solve that. And even the movement itself, the spokespeople and so on, cannot really address some of these questions. But in the larger picture, especially outside Turkey or something, the movement is known by It's more like dialogue, activities, education activities or something. And that seems to be the core of the movement and movement message rather than what happened in the last few years in Turkey in the political scene.
Go right ahead, comment on that. And then we'll-
Sorry, let me say two good things about the movement and one questionable. First of all, I've never seen a shred of evidence that they support anything other than peace. So the declaration of the Turkish government that the Gülenists are a terrorist group is absurd. Second of all, in their schools, they've taught science and mathematics. They've really emphasized what we would think of as more traditionally secular subjects like science and math. I can't vouch for exactly how they're taught, but I don't know of too many Islamic movements in the world that emphasize science and math. That's a real plus. Where I think the failing has been, and again, this is not provable, but I think many followers of Gülen, many Gülenists acknowledge that a significant minority of the police and of the judiciary were Gülenists because they wanted to be part of those organizations and exercise power. And I think there is evidence, circumstantial evidence, that they did act corporately sometimes, and particularly in the anti-military trials that went from 2008 through 2011 with manufactured evidence. And
It seemed to me from just a distance that the Gülenist movement is somewhat like the Masons were in our country's history back in the founding of our country. They were idealistic people who had a idealistic philosophy, and again, somewhere between the Masons and the Rotary Club. And I think
With schools.